Hi guys, this is my first ever post on Reddit and I made a new account just to post this story, so please bear with me. I'm 5'3", about 105 pounds and 21 years old, and this happened to me this morning, New Year's Day 2020. Also, just a warning, this is long, but it's really weird and unsettling, and I was hoping someone here could help me come up with a theory or a motive this man had, because I'm going insane not knowing and scaring myself even more. So my boyfriend Jack and I went out to a bar to celebrate New Year's Eve. I noticed he was possibly getting a little too drunk at the bar, so I suggested we go home. He agreed. This was around 12:30 AM. We had been drinking since 8. We got home and Jack just stumbles into the mudroom and lays on the ground. I was super exhausted, being drunk, and also dealing with a drunk person, so I took this opportunity to lock back the door we came through before I forget. After that, we go upstairs and go to bed. So a little bit of background. I always lock my bedroom door, even if the front and back door are locked, because after watching the Ted Bundy documentary of him breaking into college students' housing just had me so freaked out. In addition, my bedroom is on the 3rd floor of the house, and just rationally the last bedroom that you get to if you walk to the house not knowing the layout and you enter the rooms as you encountered them. Anyway, I locked my bedroom door before bed the night before because I had a bad feeling, but just wrote it off as my general anxiety. But Jack got up to pee during the night and didn't relock it. Anyway, at about 7:45 in the morning, I woke up to hear my bedroom door opening and immediately thinking it should be locked, and I dart my head up to see what's going on. Jack is also lying next to me, closest to the door at this point. I look up to the door just in time to see a man open my door and my blood runs cold. He spots my boyfriend and then slowly closes the door and walks calmly back to the stairs. He was wearing a baseball hat, with his head at a slightly downward tilt, coupled with the darkness in my room, completely shrouded his face. Possibly wearing a flannel type shirt as a t-shirt, it was open like a flannel. I wasn't able to see or make out any other details other than the fact that he looked on the younger side and was skinnier. But he walks in. I think he only looked at my boyfriend. I'm not even sure if he saw me look at him. At first, I thought my roommate's boyfriend walked into the wrong room drunkenly, and I dismiss it because I'm startled by what's going on. Mind you, this whole deal happened within the span of a few seconds. Then my boyfriend asked me who that was and if he should check it out. He didn't see the man, but he was also woken by the sound of my door opening, and also heard the footsteps go back down the stairs. Me not fully comprehending, said no, not to check anything out. But about 15 seconds after I said no, I told him that there isn't supposed to be anyone else in the house as all my roommates were away. We hop out of bed and throw on some sweats and grab a pair of scissors for defense, and I leave my room trying to find out what's going on. We headed downstairs for about 1 or 2 minutes after I saw the man at my door. I'm calling the police as my boyfriend Jack grabs a knife and goes through all the rooms of the house, making sure it's clear. As we're checking, I notice the front and back door is still locked, although the windows are unlocked and they're still all closed. At first glance, it doesn't even look like anyone had been in the house at all. Everything was just as it was, nothing touched or ransacked. The police luckily showed up in about 5 minutes, really quick response time, so I was appreciative, and began to search the house. We had to file a report and fill out some statements, but all in all they weren't able to find anything but a set of possible fingerprints on the outside of our ground floor windows, because there was such little evidence. I think some of the officers were doubting what I'd seen. They asked me if I could have been dreaming it since I'd just woken up from a night of drinking when it happened, or if possible a friend just decided to crash out at our place without telling us, and I said, "Sir, I've never been more positive in my life about what I saw." I didn't perceive the threat immediately, but there was no doubt in my mind that it was real. There was not even a person who could have possibly been there and done that, as we don't have a large friend group and rarely see anyone and have anyone over. Then the officer and my roommates texted, asked if I could look at all the rooms and see if anything was taken. So as I mentioned, my bedroom's in the last bedroom you'd reach if you went through the house logically, meaning 2 of my roommates' rooms were on the 2nd floor before mine. I checked every bedroom, and all valuables were untouched. I sent pictures of my roommates' Apple laptops, watches and AirPods etc, and they all said nothing had even been slightly moved. So this man took nothing. Also, all the bedroom doors were still closed, as if no one had entered them. I have no proof he'd even entered my room. So this is where I get super freaked out. Before the police leave, they ask if I have any past issues with stalkers or restraining orders, etc., and I said I haven't. They said what was really weird about the break-in was not only that there was so little evidence that anyone broke in, but also that we had 3 cars in our driveway. One of my roommates is abroad right now, so her car is here, including mine and Jack's. So for a stranger looking in, there seems to be at least 3 people here at the moment. I left the lights on throughout the house, so it looked like more people were home. You can tell I'm a very paranoid person, which is terrifying that the man still felt comfortable creeping in an occupied home. Secondly, the fact that this man not only got caught breaking in and entering, but the calmness of walking back down the stairs after I saw him just sends chills down my spine. I have no other way to describe it other than that he was acting like he had the right to be in my home, just accidentally opened the wrong door. The police also said that it's very unusual for the thief to look up, as in close the window and door he came in through after being caught, because he took nothing. It worries me that his motives were more sinister than that, and that he could possibly come back. Why would a burglar enter a house that looks as if it has 3 individuals in it? Why was he so calm? If he was there to rob me, why were the first 2 floors seemingly untouched? There were other weird details that I can't recall right now because honestly I've been agonising over this the entire day and feel very uncomfortable. If anyone has any theories as what possibly could be going on here or what his motives were, it would be a tremendous help. I'm not looking for a benign answer like if he was confused or drunk or something, because that's not the case. I can't even explain the feeling of fear that ran through me when I saw a man at my door. So to the man who woke me up on New Year's Day, let's never meet again. Not an English speaker, I'm Asian. I was visiting my 6-year-old nephew in California, who's on the spectrum and non-verbal, and decided to go play at the park. And this is not the first time I brought him to the same park. When we arrived, there was a couple of kids with their parents playing in the playground. My nephew then decided to run and climb a tree far from the playground, so I followed and helped him sit in a fairly low branch. He was happy. Then I just heard this voice asking if she can ask a question. I didn't know if this was directed at me, so I didn't mind it. Then she started walking towards us with her hands in her pocket. This woman's in her late 20s, early 30s, wearing sweatpants and a hoodie with a backpack on. She then shouted a series of questions to which I was indifferent until she said, "Put your hands where I can see them." Seeing that we were alone at the far side of the park, and that there is no police car nearby to at least confirm that she is an officer, I grabbed my nephew, who didn't want to be carried, and headed towards the playground where there are people. She followed us aggressively, asking, "Can I ask you a question? And is he your brother? Hey, why are you holding him like that?" I just answered, "He's my nephew, we're fine." I was panicking. I'm a short guy, a foreigner, and my nephew's starting to have a meltdown. Her hand is still in her pocket, and I've seen enough crime movies, so sorry, no, you can't ask me a question. I have no idea what's going on, but my gut feeling told me to get away as soon as possible. When she asked me if the person at the bench were my parents, I told her yes, so she'll go away. I realised they're white. Finally, we're at the playgrounds, and the woman was still there. She shouted at a couple sitting on a bench that were not responsive to her questions, and they mainly called 911 on me. The couple responded that they'll watch us. I told the couple that the kid is on the spectrum and I'm his uncle, and that the woman has been staring at us and was creepy. The wife told me that she understands since she has a neighbour on the spectrum. I don't know if I'm overreacting, but I was really scared. We played on the swings for a little bit longer just to show everyone that he is my nephew. I then told my nephew that it's bath time, which he loves, so we can walk home. I made sure I locked the doors when we got home in case she followed us. I was so creeped out. Was I overreacting over what happened, or was it harmless? I met John at a party when I was 21. He was handsome and a very smooth talker. Honestly, I hated him the first time we talked. He stole my hat and refused to give it back until I gave him my number. Instead of listening to my gut feeling I had, I gave in. We ended up texting back and forth and eventually decided to go on a date. Turned out that John lived just around the corner to me. Right off the bat, he told me about his mental health issues, bipolar, OCD, depression, anxiety. He assured me that he was taking medication for all of them. I was studying psychology in college and thought my knowledge of mental health could be beneficial to our relationship. I opened up to him about my own traumas and hardships, which bonded us. After a couple of months, I started to notice something was off. He would have these grandiose ideas about our relationship and his future for about a week or two. Then after some time, he would stop going into work. He'd lie about it all day until he would finally blow up on me, telling me he was so anxious that he spent the whole morning throwing up. I tried to be supportive of him. I told him there were other jobs he could try out, but he would always bring it back to how little I knew about hard work. I quietly noticed his highs and lows were like clockwork. He'd cycle through every 6 to 8 weeks. I knew it was his bipolar, but he'd assured me that he was taking his medication. Throughout the relationship, he became extremely possessive. If a man looked at me while we were walking down the street, he would accuse me of knowing him and wouldn't talk to me for the rest of the day. He would constantly accuse me of cheating on him with every person who looked at me. I felt like I couldn't talk to men or even dress nicely because I was afraid of attracting any attention. We broke up several times throughout the 9-month period. He'd say he couldn't be with me, and then 2 weeks later have a list of things he planned on doing if I took him back. He'd tell me all the ways he could work to improve himself in our relationship, and I trusted him. I could only take so much of the ups and downs, and when I found out he wasn't taking his medication or seeing the therapist he'd promised, I told him I couldn't do it anymore. He was furious. He texted me long rants about how worthless I was, how no one would ever be with me or connect with me. I was too privileged to ever make a difference in life. I was terrified. About 3 weeks after, I ended all communication, blocked his number and social media. He began to stalk me and harass me. Living so close was suddenly only convenient for him and my own personal hell. One night around 3 AM, I heard pounding on my window. I was terrified. I couldn't move. The pounding grew louder and louder and more intense. I slowly slipped out of my bed and onto the floor. It was with that he started calling my name. After about 50 minutes of fear, it was quiet. I called my mum and then the police. The police found a piece of paper taped to my door in red, scribbled lettering. It said that he knew that we belonged together and that he'd make sure we ended up together. I was shocked. The police told me that since the relationship was so off and on, that it was my fault. I needed to be more clear about what I wanted. Throughout the next couple of months, he'd show up outside my bedroom window and watch me. I continued to call the police, who told me that I didn't need to file a report and that just calling was good enough. He also began using his friend's social media to harass me, begging me to give him another chance. He even emailed my school email to attempt to get to talk to me again. I eventually contacted the school, who personally delivered a letter to him, banning him from the campus. This only made him more angry. He texted me from a friend's phone telling me that unless I texted him back, he would come to the campus whenever he wanted just to intimidate me. That was the final straw. I went to the police and filed a report. Eventually, he found a new girlfriend and the stalking stopped. However, just last week, I was talking on the train and saw him staring at me from another train car. His eyes were so dark and empty. I truly hope that I never see or hear from him again.
Red River Gorge is a beautiful and huge park full of wildlife, rock climbing, waterfalls and dense forests, gorges and beautiful views. The place feels truly isolated, disconnected from the rest of the world. One evening, my boyfriend Dee and I decided to go camping at the gorge. We went out and tried to find a campground that was as backwards as possible. Sites were spread far from each other. Our site, that was on the edge of a very steep drop-off. We arrived at sunset and quickly set up. By the time we're fully set up, the sun had set and we began making a fire. About 20 minutes into relaxing, we began to hear howling that doesn't go away, and it doesn't sound like it's far from us. We both freaked out by the realization that there were wolves nearby, but we tried to not overreact and continued to sit by our fire. 10 minutes later, I start hearing a faint yelling about 15 feet away past the cliff's edge. Now, I told Dee to be quiet and listen, and we're both frozen out of fear. A woman was now screaming. I couldn't make out any words at that point, but it was a deep, gurgling shriek, a noise that I've never heard a person make in my life before. Then I heard it. She was screaming, "Help, please someone help. Someone please help me," repeating this over and over again, howling at the top of her lungs. I'm terrified. She could have been turned around in the dark and fallen off the cliff. She could have been attacked by wolves or a bear or bitten by a snake. At this point we both sprinted into my car, frantically climbing inside, locking the doors. I tried calling the police but have no service. I threw the car in reverse and sped down the dirt road to find anyone that could help. The shrieks continued. I didn't make it far before I found 3 young men standing on the edge of the forest. I slowed down and cracked my window, still hearing that woman begging for help, and asking the men if they heard that. How could they have not heard it? I told them it was a young woman screaming in the forest. Then, 2 of them went sprinting into the darkness. Without questioning me or anything, the other one just stood by my car, assuring me he had no idea what was happening. While the 2 men were somewhere in the forest, I drove further down the dirt road until I found a spot to turn around at. When I came back, the screaming had stopped, and the men were back by the side of the road. I slowed down and asked them where the woman was, and one of the men that had run into the woods said, "Don't worry, it was actually just a kid messing around." I just said okay. I drove back as quickly as possible. We left the campsite and went straight home. Once out of the woods, we called the local police station multiple times to no answer. I know it wasn't a child. I've never heard such primal screams in my life. It made my skin crawl and my heart race just thinking about it. What did those men do that night? What was I a witness to? I live just where farmland meets the edge of the suburbia, on an island off the coast of BC. The climate here is sub-temperate rainforest, so the natural and untouched landscape is incredibly wild, dense and lush. I'm keen on endurance cycling, and I take full advantage of the trail network in the forest surrounding my area. I work long hours, so most of my winter rides are in complete darkness with my trusty trail light. One section of my home trail winds through a rainforest bog full of hundreds of trees. They're huge. It's absolutely beautiful in daytime. It feels like a magical place with shafts of sunlight piercing the fog, hundreds of different species of flora, and there's so many wild animals out there. It's really beautiful. Now at nights, my gut starts tightening as the thought of passing through this mile-long section of trail appears. One day about a year ago, I was lucky enough to get a chance to go for a ride through it, so I took it. It was cold and very rainy, with few other people out on the trail. I had packed thermos of hot coffee in my backpack, and I thought the rainforest-style bog was the best place to take a rest as any. Now, I chill out. I have an interest in botany, so I was looking closely at the lynches growing off of the huge Douglas fir. But suddenly, I felt distinctly not alone. No biggie. Lots of people use the trail, although not many are out there that day because the weather's so wet and cold. And that's when I heard it. A meow. That's odd because this isn't a good place for a cat to be alone. We have cougars and bears, but I hear a meow again. Except this time, It was canned and robotic sounding, like somebody playing a bad audio file with a cat. My gut starts to clench. It just sounded wrong somehow, and I can't figure out why. My hands were shaking when I unzipped my backpack to put my coffee thermos back in. I felt waves of nausea roll over me, and the air suddenly felt dense and thick. I was in a rainforest surrounded by trees and moss, but I felt like I can't get enough oxygen. I hadn't seen anyone for at least 10 miles, and I was distinctly aware of how far I was, and I couldn't really get any cell reception here either. Now, I hear the same meow again, but this time closer. I've never heard a cat like this before. It sounded like an imitation of a cat or a person saying meow. It was so tiny, cold and robotic. I now know that without hesitation, it's time for me to go immediately. I was panicked on the inside, but can't show fear, so I casually slung my leg over my bike and start riding. As soon as I got out of the bog, I ride the rest of the way home like a bat out of hell, glancing over my shoulder every few minutes. I can't see anything. I will never forget this experience for as long as I live. I've had some pretty disturbing things happen on my night rides, but nothing ever like this. I hate the fact that clearly something was imitating a cat, and I'm sure it was a recording. God knows who was out that deep into the forest too. I just hope I don't encounter this again. I used to love going for long hikes in the forest near where I live. I usually did it on summer's evenings. Yeah, I know this probably isn't the safest thing to do, but I always had my hunting rifle on me anyway. I mean, I'd be stupid not to. All it takes is one wild animal to go for you, and if you're unarmed, good luck to you. So anyway, I set out one summer's evening. I had my iPod playing some really chill songs, and I felt really good about myself. I can't really get cell phone signal where I go, because the trees cover it, but I like listening to my music. Now I was a good 40 minutes into my hike. There was enough moonlight for me to see where I was going. That's how I normally planned my hikes, when the moon was out of its brightest on the most clear days, so I can see everything. I'm really enjoying myself this night. I found true tranquility. I decided to stop for a minute, take off my headphones, and just pour out some of the hot chocolate I had in my flask. Now the second I do this, I have the feeling that I'm not alone, and I can't describe this feeling. It's almost like I'm comfortable in my own presence, but I don't want to be joined by anyone else, and this unsettles me. I just think I'm just being a little paranoid. I say to myself, thank God I've got my rifle, and I could have sworn I heard a laugh afterwards. No, it must have been just an animal, surely. So I go about drinking my hot chocolate. As I do so, and I'll never forget this, I hear someone whisper behind me, "Mind if I have some?" And a terrifying laugh follow. Now the next few seconds is a complete blur as I fumble, fall over getting up, grab my rifle, and scream myself and sprint in the complete opposite direction to where I heard the voice and back onto the trail. I try and scream out that I have a gun, but I can't get the words out. What's worse is I hear rustling behind me. I continue sprinting up the trail, only to slip temporarily again, and now on my back. I lay there wondering whether it's better to pretend I'm still. I look behind me, and I can see what appears to be the butt of a cigarette lit in the distance. Well, looks like I'm going to keep moving then. I get up again, and scream I have a gun and I'm not afraid to use it. What's worse, I'm sure I hear laughter in the distance after saying this. I sprint all the way back to my car. I don't even bother going back for my flask for anything. I immediately get on my radio and call it into the park rangers in the area, who say they're going to check it out and they want me to show them exactly where it is. I say you've got no chance and speed out of there. And the whole drive home, I can't stop thinking, who in their right mind was out there? How long were they stalking me for, and what on earth did they want? They clearly weren't mentally sane, whoever or whatever this was. Now, I don't believe in the paranormal, but this could have easily been something like that, because why would you be out there with no torch or anything? Maybe it is an insane person. All I know is that I never got to the bottom of it, and I never went out on my own in the woods at night again. Just down the road from where I lived a few years ago, in southeast Australia, is an opening into about 100 acres of woodlands and bush that I frequently went into when I was younger to do the usual things, riding and camping, etc. I was out driving at around 11:30 with my girlfriend, and as we're in the area, I decided to show her the woodlands while we sat in the area, as she enjoys everything to do with nature. And it's still summer, so it's an extremely warm night. I left my car with the light shining into the trees as we weren't going too far in, and it was pitch black inside, and the two of us just kind of sat around chatting and just relaxing. She was sitting on a sort of map of the area that had been used before, and there was some plastic around us. I kept getting this feeling like we're being watched though. Now, I've read on here a few people have said that they felt like they're in danger, although nothing around them was off. Everything was fine, apart from the feeling I had, and I just can't explain it. After lighting another cigarette, my nerves are calmed. I scanned the tree line again and realised that it looked different than before. It was only after starting into the dark that I saw that there was now moonlight lighting up all around us, and I can see a black shape blocking where we come from before. This I didn't see before. I've got goosebumps just typing this, but the only way to describe it is that all sound just ceased and everything went dead silent for a few seconds. I had this disgusting feeling of dread coming over me as I saw motion in the dark path, as something literally crawls towards us on all fours. Now, I've seen nearly every animal in the outback here, and we don't have any large predators like in the US or Europe, but somehow I knew this thing was a predator, and it wasn't hiding from us, and it starts slowly coming towards us, clearly hunting. Now, I don't know if my girlfriend saw it or not, as it was kind of dark, but I saw that thing get off on its two legs, just staring at us. Now, I'm 6'4", and this thing was about another half meter larger than me, with arms that were far too long. I mean, they're literally reaching the ground. I'm terrified now. All I can make out was an off-white, almost yellowish fur colour it had, and a strange wolf-like head. I wasn't able to move as it stared at me, but it's at this point that my girlfriend gasped, which seems to break the silence between us. I grab her arm, and we sprint to the car, slam into the doors. This thing is tearing after us too. We both screamed. We tear out of there quick, not even looking back. It took us half an hour to calm down enough to talk about what we had seen. We both discussed it many times, and know what we saw wasn't fake. We still have no explanation to it to this day. It's really scared me, and I've never went back to that area since. I grew up in the south. There's tons and tons of beautiful places to see that haven't been taken over by concrete yet. It's nice. But along with that, it's pretty boring. Being a teenager and wanting to go out and have fun led to mostly improvising with your buddies and hoping that something good can come out of the night. There wasn't really a local spot to go and hang out at, like a club or cool bar, and the places that were close to us were boring, because we'd went to them so often. I'm sure if you've ever lived in a rural area, you can understand it. Something that I found a ton of enjoyment in as a team was just cruising around super late at night listening to music. I would fill up my gas tank, grab something to drink, and I'd just drive off until the sun comes up. It was a way to clear my head and relax. Those country roads are always fun to drive down at 2 AM, and was just also the right amount of spooky. I don't know why that made me laugh. Well, one night, I absolutely got more than I bargained for. I can't remember what month it was exactly, but I knew for a fact it was in the summertime, because I was out of school, and I also remember it being a comforting, chilled night. So, if I was to guess, it was probably around July or August. I was cruising around like I always did, and was completely worry-free. I had music blaring, and I'm in my zone. I decided to head down and park just out of boredom. This particular park is at the end of a very long stretch of desolated country road, but 'tis a really pretty drive because of that. When I say desolate country road, I don't mean that it's some dirt road that goes through the woods or anything crazy. It's a normal paved road, but there really is nothing on it after a certain point. The entire road takes about 20 minutes to drive down, and to get to the park after about 10 minutes into the drive. That's where the houses start spreading out further and further before there's none, and just a road leading to a park. I think a lot of the reason I like this drive is, at night, it's so creepy, and there's really no getting over that. I love the adventure of it. Now, the park isn't open for camping or anything. It's mostly just lots of land with walking trails and biking trails set up through miles of woodland. So obviously at around 3 AM in the morning, it's pretty dead. I made it there and just did a slow normal loop around the park. The night before it stormed so badly, so I remember my parents and I had to take shelter because of the threat of a tornado. There ended up being no tornado, but the storms were pretty rough. Because of it, I come up on a fallen tree in the road that looped around to the exit of the park that must have been caused by the storm. It wasn't some massive tree or anything, but I knew for a fact that there was no way it could have gotten there from a car, obviously. It was pitch black everywhere besides the front of my car because of my headlights, and because of that, I immediately ruled out backing up the entire way. I just drove when I entered the park. I knew that this was super dangerous and there was no way. At this point on the road, there was flat land on each side of me. I figured that it would make the most sense just to back up to the grass beside me, just a little, and then drive back the way I come. It was a one-way loop around the park, but I wasn't really worried about going out in the wrong way because it's so late. So now I start to back off the road so I can get my car to turn around. All was good until I pull off onto the road. I totally didn't take into account how wet the grass was and the amount of mud there is. My car went absolutely nowhere. My back tyres are completely stuck and were spinning in places where I didn't think they could. I start getting scared now. It really isn't the most ideal of situations to be in. I immediately take my cell phone out of my pocket and saw that I had service, which comes as a massive relief. I call my parents and tell them what's happening and where I was. I'm pretty annoyed, but they said that they're gonna pay for the tow truck to get me. My parents both drove their small 4-door sedans, and they said that they would be zero help in the situation I'm in. It was about 45 minutes away from my home and most of human civilization, so I was pretty sure I'm going to be stuck there for at least an hour before someone comes to get me. It's a freaky feeling. But I try getting out of my head and just continue listening to music and playing on my phone. Not really a lot I can do. After I kind of calmed down from the initial anger I had, I started to check out my surroundings. I didn't even notice at first because everything's going on, but in front of my car's placement was a field that's full of deer. It's the most I've ever seen in my life. There legitimately must have been 40 deer just walking around eating grass. The field wasn't directly in front of my car, but if I was to get out and throw a rock, I would have easily hit one. So if I'm gonna guess, they're probably about 30 yards away. I watch them for a little bit, but I'm quickly over it and start browsing through my socials on my phone. They seem to have been over it quicker than I was because they all go back to eating grass after figuring out I'm not going to attack them. After browsing my phone for 15 minutes, I finally get a call back from my parents letting me know that the tow truck guy's coming. He's about an hour and a half away. Still to this day, I remembered hearing that and thinking, "You've got to be kidding me." I understood that me and only me is the reason that I'm in this situation, so I can't complain. But I mean, come on. I decide that the smartest thing to do now is to make sure all the doors are locked and lay back and sleep for a bit. So that's what I do. Okay, here we go. So I wake up 45 minutes later to the feeling of being watched. I'm not sure if anyone has ever experienced it before. I don't know how common it is, but it's almost like a sixth sense was going off in my head telling me I need to wake up. Now. Waking up to that feeling in that situation is horrifying. I sit up and immediately check my surroundings to see nothing. I look through my car very quickly for any kind of weapon and find a pocket knife. A pocket knife. Great. I'm really scared now, even though I haven't saw or heard from anyone. I was shocked to see that the field of deers in front of me was still full. I don't know anything about the animal, but I guess they were just gonna move. But they're motionless. I call my parents back to see if they've heard anything. I decide not to mention how scared I am because I know it's gonna worry them. And there's no updates from the tow truck guy, so this can't be much worse. The last call just lasted a few minutes, and I felt like an idiot. They both had to wake up for work quickly after, and now they spent over $100 to try and get me home, and they're worried about me. We hung up, and I looked up from the phone, and immediately went from 0 to 100 in a panic. All of the deer in front of me had perked up, staring in the same direction in front of them. Every single one of them. One of them stopped dead in their tracks, standing completely still. The others followed, looking at something. I put my high beams on and stared, waiting for absolutely anything to happen. But there's nothing. I tap my horn real quick. They don't even budge. That's what scares me. They were completely glued to what was in front of them instead of being scared by me. I know they were looking into the woods, but where I was, I can only see them. I can hear my heartbeat, and I grabbed my pocket knife and just waited for something to happen. I would say it was about a minute after I honked. Every single one of them in unison ran the opposite direction that I'm in. And now within 10 seconds, it's completely empty with just me in the field. I'm petrified in fear. I knew that staying in my car would be the safest thing, but I'm now stuck. My head is on a swivel. I'm freaking out in every possible way. I assumed that it's a bear or something, but it could have been absolutely anything. I was convinced at that point that it's the devil himself. I don't know what to do now. I knew that the tow truck was close by, but I have no idea where. I start shaking because of nerves, and just look around me to make sure nothing was by me, and focusing on the field in front of me. I did this for what felt like an actual eternity, sitting in complete silence and darkness in the middle of nowhere, waiting for something to jump out and attack me. Now 15 of the longest minutes of my life go by, and I start to see lights break through the tree line on the road. As it gets closer, I see it's a tow truck guy. The lights on in his truck feel like Jesus coming. He gets up to me and I jump out of the car and say, "Do you have a gun?" I tell him what's happened and he said something's definitely nearby. He let me know that he grabbed his shotgun in the truck and assured me that it's probably a bear or bobcat. He gave me the whole, "They're more scared of you than you're of them" crap. The tree was small enough for him to sort of bulldoze it out of the way and hooked up my car. He wasn't really listening to what I was saying about the story, but knew I was shaken up from it. The whole time, I still had my eyes glued on the field looking for anything. He was completely done with everything in about 15 minutes, and he told me that to follow his truck out of there and onto the main road's the best bet. I got in my car and was ready more than anything to get out of there. We start to move away from the spot I'm in, and I still had my head on a swivel, completely shaken up. As we're driving away, I look in my rear view, and just out of the way, I could see the partially lit up spot where I was from the vehicle lights. I watch in my rear view mirror as a man comes out of the tree line behind my car and walks into the middle of the road watching us. He's a huge person too. My heart stops. I legitimately start bawling out of fear. I can't see any details of the man. I don't care about that, honestly. The feeling when we're driving away was the worst of my life. He stands there the whole time. Now he was there watching me, creeping up on me when I'm completely alone for a very long time. Maybe even coming up to my window watching me sleep. That's a feeling that I can't quite put into words. The entire time we're driving off, as long as I can see him, he doesn't move. He just watches. A million things are racing through my mind now. I was scared that there might have been multiple people waiting for us. I was trying to figure out if I should start beating on my horn or what. I decide all I want to do though is get out of there, more than anything. The second we finally got out of the park and was able to be on two roads, I drive past the tow truck driver doing at least 70 miles per hour. I run inside, quickly saying sorry to my parents and nothing more, run into my room, not sleeping for a single second that night. I was searching everywhere for what could have happened, escaped convicts, whatever, and I've come to the conclusion that I'm never going to know who was out there or what they were planning to do to me. I never told my parents this story either until years after, and it freaked them out when I told them it, even in my older age. I never went back to that park ever again, and I never will for as long as I live.